Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, first I want to thank IPS for organizing this very timely webinar on an issue that impacts not only our region but the world globally, especially the Muslim world. Because what we are seeing increasingly is the abuse and torture and victimization of Muslims across the world, but especially in occupied territories like Kashmir, like Palestine. And the whole international system at the same time is also undergoing changes. Since the Trump administration came into power, we are seeing a gradual approach which is now becoming more pronounced towards unilateralism. In other words, the decades of multilateral structures that had been built in different fields of conflict resolution, of arms control, they're all being scuttled one by the present US administration. So in a way, the whole world is undergoing a systemic change as well. And in that systemic change, of course, the Muslim world is also having to adjust to the new realities, adjust to a more aggressive and hostile approach that the non-Muslim world is taking towards the Islamic world. And therefore, it's very important to understand the changing relationship also that the Muslim countries have with India. Because if we recall, after 1947, while some Muslim countries immediately developed a close affinity to Pakistan, like Turkey, like Indonesia at the time, like Iran, Malaysia. There were many other countries, especially in the Arab world, which had close ties to India and were not very comfortable with the creation of Pakistan. I recall, for example, Egypt, when it was under the monarchy, their King Farouk saying, it seems as if Islam has been discovered in 1947. So there was a general hostility towards Pakistan, and that hostility was further aggravated when Pakistan willy-nilly, in my view, and I think wrongly so, joined the US military alliances of CENTO and SEATO. That immediately disturbed Pakistan's relations with Egypt, with Iraq, and a number of other countries. And I'm talking only of the Muslim world. It also made our relationship with China and with Russia much more difficult, and it took a long time to overcome those differences. So Pakistan did not start off by having extremely close ties with all the Muslim countries at the time. We were lucky we had a close relationship with Iran at the time. Our relationship with Turkey actually has a long history, and there is an affinity between the two peoples that transcends politics. As we can recall, the Khilafat movement that started when the Indian Muslims sent money to Turkey, even though by then Turkey was undergoing its own revolution and under Ataturk. Nevertheless, this relationship that was carved out at the time between Indian Muslims and the Turkish people stood us in good stead and was built upon after the creation of Pakistan. In fact, just to mention in passing, the Ish Bank in Turkey was actually created with the money that was sent by the Indian Muslims to Turkey during the Khilafat movement, which started in British India. Also, of course, with Iran, we had a very good strategic partnership. Iran was a monarchy at the time, was very much, of course, in the US sphere of influence. But for us, it was extremely critical because with a hostile India on our borders, our western border was not disturbed by a hostile state. So the Iran-Pakistan strategic relationship at the time was equally important. Also, luckily in those early days, we had a good relationship with the Indonesian leadership at the time, and Indonesia is one of the largest Muslim states, as we know. With Malaysia also, we had a very close affinity, especially since the Malaysian rulers' children used to study in HSN College in Pakistan. So there were these ties that we developed very early on, which stood us in good stead. Pakistan also, by its own pro-activism, became one of the leaders in supporting Muslim causes. We supported the Palestinian cause, and we have continued to support that cause even during the time when the PLO leadership in the form of Yasser Arafat was very close to India because of the non-aligned movement, and I'll talk about that in a while. We also, of course, were in the forefront of helping the nationalist struggles for independence in Tunisia and in Algeria. The Tunisian leader Bourguiba, Algerian leaders like Farhat Abbas all worked or all traveled on Pakistani passports, and the Pakistani embassy in Paris was a link between the fighters, the nationalist fighters in the homeland of Algeria and in Tunisia, and of course their links to the French government and the communications and so on. Then of course Pakistan, regardless of what the relationship was at a bilateral level between different Arab countries, stood by the Arab world in its wars against Israel. And in the 73 war, Pakistani pilots took leave to go and fight for Jordan and for Syria, and our fighters shot down Israeli aircraft during that war. So there was a principled position we took on supporting Muslim causes, on supporting Muslim states when they were attacked by Israel, and of course in principle supporting the Palestinians' right to their homeland. And that was of course also linked to our position on Kashmir, the right of the Kashmiris to self-determination. So that principle that we supported the Palestinian state on was reflected our principled position on the Kashmir issue as well. Now, of course, coming to Kashmir, for us, that has been a central factor in not only defining our relationship with India, but in defining our relationship with the Muslim world. How do Muslim countries, what is the position that Muslim countries take on Kashmir? That to a large extent helps define how we interact with them. Now, there are some countries, even after the revolution in Iran, for example, we find Iran has taken one of the strongest positions on Kashmir presently. Turkey has taken, is another state that has taken one of the strongest positions. Unfortunately, we find in our Arab allies, the position on Kashmir has not been clear, very vociferously stated in support of Pakistan. That is a dilemma that we need to overcome. We also realize over a period of time, our relationship with Indonesia has not remained at the level that it was in the early years. And one of the causes why a number of Muslim countries have developed close relations with India is because of the economic factor. Let's be very clear, there are strong economic interests that define interstate relations. And therefore, it creates issues for Pakistan when it seeks support from Arab countries and other Muslim countries against India and in support of the Kashmiri people and their struggle for self-determination. For example, the most recent election of India to the UN Security Council sadly got a huge amount of votes from the OIC members. In fact, the OIC in many ways has been very disappointing. We have interacted with the OIC on the Kashmir issue. There was a Islamic countries foreign ministers group that was formed on Kashmir, but substantively in concrete terms, we have not been able to muster the support which we should have gotten on principle on the issue of Kashmir. And why am I saying on principle? Because the dynamics have altered on Kashmir, and that requires the international community to review how it views India. When I talk about dynamics, I'm talking about what this Hindutva supremacist Modi government did on 5th August, and that is recorded very well. It illegally annexed Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In other words, it wanted to try and change the legal status of Kashmir as a disputed territory, which is recognized under UN Security Council resolutions. Now, this act itself is a war crime under the 4th Geneva Convention, because you cannot change the status of an occupied territory. So just on that, we should have expected, and we did expect, Muslim countries at least and the OIC to rally behind Pakistan and condemn India for committing what was effectively a war crime. Sadly, the statements coming from different Muslim countries, apart from Iran and Turkey and Malaysia, were not very encouraging. OIC itself dithered on the issue, and to date, there is a bit of a confusion over what the OIC's position exactly is on the new changed dynamics of the Kashmir dispute in view of what this fascist Modi government is doing. Because of this, we have found also that in the UN Human Rights Council, we were not able to get the sort of support we should have gotten for bringing about a discussion on the human rights violations in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, despite the fact that the UN Human Rights Commissioner's Office, High Commissioner's Office, has published 2 Kashmir reports clearly demanding that the UN Human Rights Council set up an investigation commission to go and investigate human rights violations in Kashmir, especially in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So this relationship, because the dynamics have altered in what India is doing post 5 August, therefore there should have been a change in the view that a number of the Muslim countries view the relationship with India. What is now happening finally is not because of what India has done in occupied Kashmir or what India is doing to the Muslims in India itself, because they've been conducting a campaign to basically make Muslims of India stateless by the changes they've made in their Citizenship Act. What has changed the dynamics finally in especially the Arab world is Indian government claiming to or stating that the COVID pandemic in India spread because of Muslims. That has finally awakened Muslim civil societies, Arab civil societies, and the pressure on their governments has become much more to condemn India for its abuses of Muslims in occupied Kashmir and in India itself. And we see for the first time very vocal statements coming on social media from Arab civil society, and we are also seeing as a result more vocal condemnations of India's treatment of Muslims coming from the Arab states themselves. But there is still a long way to go. On the part of Pakistan, I think Pakistan has had a principled position on supporting Muslim causes and Muslim states, regardless of how they interact with us. For example, we have stood steadfast on flatly refusing to have any sort of overture with the Zionist state, with Israel, including flatly refusing, and rightly so, recognition of Israel, even though many Muslim countries have recognized Israel. And we are also seeing other Muslim countries making overtures towards Israel. But Pakistan's position has always been and has been reiterated very recently by our foreign minister that there is no question of Pakistan recognizing Israel till there is a Palestinian state, according to the UN resolutions dealing with the two-state solution. So Pakistan has continued to maintain its principled position, but the time has come for the rest of the Muslim world also to stand up and be counted. Are they going to allow abuse of Muslims as long as it doesn't happen in their territories? Are they going to allow Muslims in occupied territories to be brutalized, to have the status of these internationally recognized occupied territories altered unilaterally and illegally by states like India and Israel? Or is the Muslim world finally going to actually come together and be recognized as the Muslim Ummah, speak with one voice in support of Muslims and Muslim human rights wherever they are, and to condemn abuses and victimization of Muslims wherever they may be? It is not a matter of national interest for these Muslim countries. We also have to have Ummah interest in the forefront. If we say there is such a thing as an Islamic world and a Muslim Ummah, if we believe in that, then let us put that belief to a practical action, to put it to practical action, or let us then not talk about the existence of a Muslim Ummah, because so far disunity unfortunately defines it much more than unity. But speaking again, let me conclude on this, speaking again for Pakistan, Pakistan will not waver. We never wavered even when we had lost half our country due to Indian machinations. We will not waver in our support for Kashmir, in our support for Palestine, and we will continue to do what we have to do to ensure that Kashmiris get their right of self-determination. We expect other Muslim countries to support us as we support them, but whether we go it alone or go it with the Ummah, our commitment is a principled commitment for the Kashmiris and for the Palestinians, both of whom are suffering fascist governments and both of whom are being subjugated the most violent abuses in complete contravention of international laws and UN Security Council resolutions. We will not let that continue to happen. Our fight will continue at all levels. Thank you.